Hello, good night. Welcome to Legalize this 9th day of November 2025. And tonight we have with us members from the Transport Board, including the CEO. We will be discussing the issue of traffic. We have a feedback from someone. I don't know if we could just add that out. Yes, it sounds better. Yes, and tonight we have with us, as I said, the members of the Transport Board, the CEO, Mr. David Bartholomew, Mr. Hatuey Campbell, a member of the board, and we expect to be joined by Mr. Ken Lewis momentarily. Ironically, he got tied up in traffic congestion. But before we go into the program tonight, we just want to recognize those who assist us in being able to carry this program every week, namely Gel Professional Solutions Inc., Jim FM carried this program on FM radio out of Canada, also Grenada Technical and Allied Workers Union, GTAP.
Attention all workers, your health and safety at work are critical. At Grenada Technical and Allied Workers Union, we are dedicated to ensuring you have a safe and secure work environment. If you encounter unsafe conditions or are involved in an accident, take immediate actions. Report it to the company, your shop steward, and make sure it reaches your union. Your health and safety is a priority, and a strong union means a strong voice for your rights. Don't wait. Address concerns right away and protect your well-being. For a safer workplace and a better quality of life, stand with the Grenada Technical and Allied Workers Union. Together, we can create a safer, healthier work environment for everyone.
So once again, good night, Mr. Bartholomew. Good night, Mr. Campbell. Aisha, good night. Welcome all. Thank you for appearing.
Pleasant good night to everyone on the call.
Good night, sir.
Yes.
And the audience as well.
Yes. Good night to all those following the program. And we await our brother Ken Lewis in a short. So, Mr. Bartholomew, welcome again. And I don't know if you have any opening comments on tonight's program or the topic, the matters up for discussion, where we have introduction.
Okay, let me say again, good evening. Good evening to the listening public across Grenada, Carriacou and Petit Martinique, in the diaspora, and across the globe, who are all tuned in to what we are doing here. It is my pleasure to be on such a program, and I hope that at the end of the program, the public will be enlightened, they'll be more accurate and brought up to date with some of the things that are happening at the Transport Board, and we take it from there.
Martin?
Well, pleasant good night again, to the team here on the call from Legalize, and to the audience. It's always a pleasure, to speak on transportation. As I said before, the board is working away, sometimes in silence, at what is really an important player in the present and future of Grenada, right? Its economy, the health of its citizens, general happiness, and productivity, So when you have a chance to work on these things, it's of the highest priority, of course. And, I'm hoping that we can dive into a few subject matter today to brief not only yourself, but the audience on what has been happening.
Aisha, you want to come in?
Thank you so much for our guests for joining us this evening. It's a pleasure to have you. When Mr. Layne told me what the topic would have been, I got very excited because I think that the topic is one of great public importance. And I do believe that we'd have an engaging audience this evening. So we look forward to the dialogue. And I'll let Mr. Layne start off.
Okay, I think Ken is here with us.
Hello, guys. Listen, I'm here, but I'll have to come back in a few minutes. I'm just almost on my way home. Okay?
Okay, great.
Just give me a few minutes.
Okay, good. So, first, will you describe any one of you, Mr. Bartholomew, of the traffic woes that we experience in Grenada? And I think we all know it. Is it really a problem of development? Just wonder, yes, is it a problem of development?
Should I?
Yes,
You can.
go.
You can.
Yes. And if I may, I think the first thing we need to do is to look at the enabling scenarios and situation that will that is contributing to our traffic woes. Grenada has a very interesting road network, And added to that, over the last few years, there has been an exponential increase in vehicles, and it's continuing on our very challenged road network. I think we all know the challenge that we have in terms of the quantum of vehicles that comes in almost every month, the challenge that we have in our small roads with hard room for expansion, where we have the houses are literally on the road, so it doesn't leave room for expansion. We also have the challenge with parking. People are buying vehicles and they literally have to park. Parking is on road. So all those are contributory factor to some of the traffic woes that we are having. So it's literally, to look at it and to look for solutions, we have to look from a holistic point of view, where we have to find solutions. So I just wanted to start. I just wanted to add that as my starting point in the whole mix, so that we could get a framework from which we start. Then added to that again, we have Grenada. To me, it's one of the fastest developing islands in the Caribbean. There's a lot of construction work taking place all the time. So you have a lot of construction vehicles, heavy trucks, a lot of construction vehicles that are added to the road population. So all of these things is added to our traffic woes. So that's just the base from which I like to look at it from.
Yeah. I think your point is partially right, Mr. Layne. And I say that because it's certainly part of the problem, right? Is the pace of development versus the pace of everything else that goes into what makes a world-class transportation system, right? So the way, and Mr. Bartholomew alluded to some of this, or made light of some of this. It's the composition of many things. So, and when I last was on the show, remember we talked about defining congestion, right? And we talked about the fact that you talk to, depending on the Grenadian you talk to, they'll give you a totally different example, right? At times. It's not to say that they're not right. It's just that transportation as a system is a very wide network of different components that make that system what it is, right? So, and different people are exposed to different parts of that system at different points in time. So, so to say development only, probably not, but certainly it plays a part, a major part of what is putting a lot of weight on something that is not necessarily the most modernized system we have implemented today.
Thank you so much. Mr. Lane, I know I gave you the privilege of asking the first question, but I wanted to dial back just a slight bit. I know that there's a traffic commission. Can you please tell the audience what is the commission responsible for, what the makeup of the members, and what's the typical duties of the commission, so they can have an idea of who we're talking to and what roles or how do you effectively manage traffic in Grenada? And this could be for anyone.
Okay. Mr. Bartholomew, maybe I could take this one. That's fine. I could start, certainly. Well, at the top of the list is, Ms. McLean, I would say is advising the line minister, right, who happens to be Honorable Deacon Mitchell. We directly advise him on all matters of land transport. And certainly then the list of other obligations extend from there. They go into fares management, rules and regulations for land-based transport. In reality, the registration of buses, the stickers that you see today, and allowing certain buses to run certain routes, route management as well. So the different routes that you see today in the bus network, those things are really under our guard as well. The traffic wardens that you see operating as well, they are actually part of the GTC, though they do collaborate heavily with our law enforcement in the RGPF, right? So there's quite a lot of dynamic to that. We also not only advise, but we do try to meet with the Prime Minister to understand the needs, right? Because there are a lot of other elements exerting themselves on, as even as Mr. Layne pointed out, development and other areas that are pressing for our transportation network to be ready for. So he advises us on upcoming factors that we may not know just from a GTC standpoint, right? The GTC, you asked about its composition. So we are made up of different members, of course. On the line today, you have 2 board members in Mr. Ken Lewis, many years, as he could attest to, in transportation in New York and other areas. I myself, based out in Chicago, frequently in Grenada, to help with matters of the GTC, with engineering experience. You have Mr. Francis Paul, who is the actual president of the, Mr. Lewis, of the, can you correct me here? It is leaving my mind here. But
the Bar Association.
Yes, the Bar Association, and also serves as a magistrate. You have the Permanent Secretary for Infrastructure in Alva Brown. You have Jasmine Alexander, who is the head HR individual for one of Grenada's top companies. You have, Miss Sahai, who is currently, Miss Sahai Gibbs, who is currently studying in Mexico as a professional urban planner. So you do, and also I shouldn't forget, you also have the current commissioner of police, right, as in Randy Connaught. So you do have significant experience going into this particular board. And I'm just checking my mind here just to make sure that I'm not forgetting anyone, of course. You also have the team which serves under the GTC organization that's led by the CEO who's on the call here, in David Bartholomew. He has a certain amount of staff, and also to the wardens that you see every day are part of that organization as well.
Thank you so much, Mr. Campbell. So, my takeaway so far is that there is a very experienced board,
Yes.
and therefore we do expect a lot of results from this board based on the experience. And you said yourself that your background is engineering.
Correct.
Great. I also recall early up in the program I don't know if it's yourself or Mr. Bartholomew, you mentioned that Grenada has a unique road system. Now, I'm not familiar with road systems, and I don't think our audience is either. Is there a particular type of road system that Grenada has that you could say, okay, Grenada has this type of road system as compared to, let's use Antigua, because Antigua is a flat country. So, what's the difference?
I share with mute.
Oh, I was asking what makes Grenada's road system so unique? Sorry,
I don't think it's unique at all.
it's not unique.
It's not unique. Grenada road system is very much like what happened in a lot of the islands in the
Mhm.
Caribbean. The
Mhm.
roads were, first of all, they were tracks up until the early 19th century, 20th century, when when they started becoming paved roads, and they were mostly for horse and carriages and buggy and so on. And those roads really followed much of the contour of the island. They followed close to river tracks. They followed close to the coaster, I mean, to the coast of the island. And from those original dirt roads, they built paved roads on them. So they were not always the best engineered road. I mean, for example. So if you look at the country and you look at our roads, yes, there are a lot of roads to do economic activity that eventually became the paved roads. But they're winding. If you go up to St. David's, they will tell you that it's what, 15 miles from Grenville or whatever, or how many miles, but you actually do a lot more, because if you travel, you would see you go above the riverbank and make probably travel 1,000 yards. I mean, to come back into something that you could have crossed in probably 50 yards,
Mhm.
So it's not built in the best of ways, and it's something that we will have to look long term in terms of rethink the roads that we have. We do not have a central highway, for instance, that goes from the airport to the north of the country, which is something that could really change. In most countries, when you're building modern roads, you would go through the mountains. It takes a lot of more engineering and more work up front, but the road becomes shorter. The the steep inclines are avoided, and you really build much better roads for travel. So we don't have a unique road network, and we have one that was really built historically and chronologically. A lot of it were built up until the 1960s and so on. So that's our road network, more or less. But we do have a lot of roads in
Yeah.
Grenada.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed, you do have a lot of roads in Grenada. Not being originally from Grenada, I must admit, when the first time I ever went over the hills was a terrifying experience. But
For most people, for most people.
I've become accustomed. You think I born in Grenville. I just wanted to go back on the road itself. So you stated that the roads were originally tracks and then they became paved. So the pave is what type of material is used to pave the roads?
Anyone? Well, you have bitumen. I don't know exactly what they're using now, but it's a lot of. Originally, it was a lot of tar and
Mhm.
stuff like that from the pit that you would use. But now there's a lot more materials that can be used, and it's really important because the materials that you use to build
Mhm.
roads now would matter a lot in terms of in the maintenance, which is a problem we have also. When you build a road, you have to constantly be maintaining it, and the road goes into disrepair. But now there are some materials that can be used that would make it a lot easier. So, for example, roads now are built with synthetic materials involved in the bitumen and so on. And so when you do that, there is less wear and tear, and the roads can actually stay much longer without a maintenance. In this case, in our roads, every time a heavy rain falls, you would see part of the road is out. A lot of the trucks in the country are very large, so the road and the subsystem under was not really built to maintain those kind of weight and tonnage. In fact, I think sometimes in the law, some of the trucks that are actually running here would require special permits, and they just operate on this road here with impunity.
Yeah.
So
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. And I think backpacking off of your answer, maybe I could ask this to Mr. Campbell, based on your background as an engineer.
Mhm.
I don't know if I'll be putting you on the spot asking this, so just excuse me. Mr. Lewis explained the type of materials that are used typically in Grenada to construct or build a road. Do you think, as an engineer, and based on your knowledge and what you know of Grenada, that's the best material? And if ultimately that isn't the best material, what is? And what is the cost? Because all of this comes down to cost. Is a cost factor involved, I'm sure. But I'm going to jump. Actually, when you answer, I'm going to ask my last question, and then I'll let Mr. come in as well. I'm sorry, Mr. Layne, Mr. Bartholomew, but this is so interesting to me.
Not a problem at all. You proceed.
So I'm going to take 2 steps back here, because I think while Mr. Lewis did entertain the question, it's key to note that infrastructure is the group that handles road building and maintenance, and the expertise on the board. While we can give an opinion, despite being in engineering for almost 2 decades, it's really not the expertise that we have. So I would not have a prepared answer for you that certainly, I could chime in and give my opinion, right? But the people that control the process, control, where they're sourcing materials, what sort of planning they have for 2 years, 1 year from now. In other words, immediate to long term, what they're doing. I wouldn't have that information to provide to you, right? So while my answer might be entertaining, it certainly would not be the most informed based on the happenings within the people responsible for that duty. So yeah, I mean, I what I would say is that we do have significant challenges, right, from a road maintenance standpoint. In advising the PM, what I will mention is this, right? There are certainly ways we could chime in on this, right? There are, for example, far more advanced trucks now that I call them a one-stop shop, right? So they do the compression, they carry the heated materials, they do the drying, etc. And a lot of it is automated, meaning that you're using less people to patch roads, and it's doing a more significantly better job in terms of patching, let's say, a pothole that appears. Today we know how that's done, right? I think we've all seen the workers that are outside on mornings or evenings trying to get the job done. But what we've significantly seen, and I've seen it here, are these trucks that have automated compactors and other elements, right? And I've seen from my industry as well, because I do serve and design controls for vehicles that operate in construction and agriculture as a living right now. And I do see some of those advancements being made. So what that means is that it would be cheaper for you to patch the roads. You can do them in a faster amount of time and potentially save money. Now, this is where I would stop, because maybe it is the case that infrastructure is considering these advancements. So I don't want to speak too much on that to take away from them. Okay.
Thank you so much, Mr. Campbell. I feel as though we have some bit of a legal background as well, because of the disclaimer before the answer.
It is legalized after all, right? So.
But I certainly appreciate you giving some insight nevertheless.
Yeah.
Mr. Layne, you could join us here.
Yes. I don't know, Mr. Bartholomew, I don't know if you had a particular take when you said unique. In particular, having Having I did spend most of your life outside of Grenada. I just would like to, because you may have been speaking, you may have been looking at it from a different angle from Ken. So I just wanted to pick up on that. You're muted. You have to unmute.
Yeah, when I use the word unique, it was based on my experience here in Grenada and the actual sizes of the road. Well, I've been to other Caribbean islands. I've been to visited different countries, and so I know exactly what the road look like. Grenada has smaller roads. The houses, which is again, it's in the other countries, but it's very unique. It's very prevalent here. The houses are literally built on the road, so that unless, and I think Ken mentioned it, unless you cut through the mountains, right, there's really no way to get any expansion unless you go through the mountains. You know, so from that point of view, when I say unique, that's what I was really talking about. Yeah.
And actually, you raised the point which we see many times about houses and buildings being almost directly on the roadside. Strictly speaking, that is not supposed to happen because there's supposed to be a certain amount of feet away from the road in terms of construction. So not really to leap over, but one of the things that we looked at and was focused on in the promo was the issue of regulations and enforcements. Because I think there are regulations for many of these things, but I think probably you may agree that there is an enforcement deficit.
Mr. Bartholomew, answer.
Well, first of all, is enforcement, because you have the wardens and so. And I know you work with physical planning also. Is enforcement part of the mandate of the authority, of the commission?
In enforcement, I want to say falls more on the RGPF. It ultimately, I think we are again, I want to go back to regulations and policies, right? Policy advisement. We do have the ability to change the fares and other things, right? But that, of course, comes through also advisement as well and discussion. Enforcement, certainly we do have that collaborative element, right? And we do have the wardens, we do have the commissioner of police that sits on our board, right? As in Randy Canot. So I would say the influence is there. Now to go back to your original question, which is asking, is there a deficit? What I would want to say is this, is certainly in order to get our system to a point where we believe we need to be in order to enhance the day-to-day lives of most Grenadians, then there certainly needs to be more areas where the current laws are enforced and new areas where we advise on where new enforcement can take place because of how the system has evolved over the last few years, right? Despite policy remaining somewhat the same, consistent, right? So that's what I would say. There's definitely a yes to that, and even more, right? In a sense that we have to play catch up, right? In terms of the new behavioral trends that we see, right? From our day-to-day citizens. When you drive across the island today and compare it to how it used to be 10 years, 15 years ago, right? I'm sure there were nowhere near as many roadside garages, right? There were not so many shops on the coastline, right, operating right by the road. So, and what I'm trying to mention is that we have to keep pace with some of those trends that we see, right, from citizens, right? And certainly there's room, but certainly to answer your question, yes, there's room to enhance enforcement. I'm sure the commissioner would say that himself.
I think it's one of the major problems that we have, and it's not just because of the police not enforcing. I think it's the entire system that needs an upgrade in terms of the amount of vehicles that we operate with now, and the fact that there is a lot more technology that can be used to make sure that the laws are obeyed. Because I don't understand how you could solve the congestion problem in the short term. Congestion is really two things. It's, and if we didn't do a definition at first, but basically it's about too much vehicles, too high a density for the capacity you have. And by capacity, we mean the actual routes. And since the roads is a long term, to change the size of the road, to change the width, to go through the mountains, as we were just talking about, those things will take time, not just 5 years, probably 10 years or longer. So the capacity part of congestion takes a long time. But the mobile part of the congestion, which are the vehicles, is something that is more short term, and that you can affect. And you can affect it by mitigation in terms of the traffic management. So that's one. But if you are going to have traffic management, then you must have enforcement. When people break the laws, when people are parked in places where they should not be, which, so for example, one car parked in a bad place can then spiral down, which makes 100 people late for their jobs. What is the cost of that? So that's a pretty high cost. If every person in that car loses half an hour because of a truck parked very badly. So you have to have enforcement. And I think that's something we really have to increase. And it has to be far more holistic than just the police, because when you do those things, you have to change culture. You have to have the courts to back it up, as you guys in legalism would know. You have to have the technology to make sure that you are getting the right person. And there's a lot of that available now. So we really have to up that. But as the CEO said a while ago, it has to be holistic and really thought out.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. My question that I have now is to Mr. Bartholomew. One of the key things that I see featuring in the answers is this has a lot to do with stakeholder involvement, such as I've heard PDA being mentioned, I heard the police, the traffic wardens, etc. What I want to know is, how are the relationships generally with the stakeholders? Are they willing to meet with their GTC to further the mandate of the board of the commission? How does that work?
Yeah. In terms of stakeholders engagement, one of our key stakeholders is the police force. And we do have regular meetings with the police force in terms of enforcement. But let me just drill back a bit. At present, we, like I said before, we must have a very holistic approach to solutions in transportation. It's not an easy fix. It's not an easy fix, as we all have been saying. We at present have some consultants that we are working with. They were brought on to us through the CDB, and they are actually working on creating a road transport policy. They're working on creating a road transport policy. It has started. As a matter of fact, in a couple of weeks, they will be on the ground in Grenada, meeting with some of the key stakeholders, inclusive of board members, inclusive of the police, inclusive of the Ministry of Infrastructure, inclusive of climate resilience, and all the major stakeholders, even also the non-governmental organization, all stakeholders. They'll be here for 1 week meeting with all stakeholders. And that is towards formulating a policy, a road transport policy. So just wanted to put that on the table. It means it's being looked at, and it's being looked at from a very holistic point of view. And all these stakeholders will be involved. And like I said, from board members, from key stakeholders, the Royal Grenada Police Force, NGOs, all stakeholders will be engaged. As a matter of fact, two critical stakeholders I didn't call, the NBA, the Taxis Association, and other private associations. They'll all be involved in those deliberations. So they'll be here in about a week or so. And you know, if people want to reach out, maybe as I'm speaking here, the diaspora will know, the general public will know. So if they want to reach out to us at the Grenada Transport Commission, they can reach out to us to see whether there could be some engagement, additional engagement, or information that they like us to share with that consultant team. And we are quite willing to receive any suggestions, information to help inform those policy, because the policy must be, it's generic in nature, but it has to be unique to Grenada. And like I said, Grenada have some peculiar circumstances and situations. You know? So whatever policy that is being formulated has to be unique to Grenada, outside of the normal generic things. So I just wanted to put that on the table and let the general public know that they could call the GDC, they could call board members, they could call anyone if they have any information, if they have any thing they want to add or they want to see in the policy, and the consultant could look at it, evaluate it, and to see whether it could be added to the policy.
So, Mr. Bartholomew, sorry, go ahead, Mr. Lee.
Let me ask, how do you, have you thought about involving the equipment operators and those who operate the big trailer trucks? I suspect there will be a few who actually own and operate them. Because I think they are major players in this whole thing.
Yeah, that'd be noted.
Yes.
As I said before, anyone who have a contribution to make in terms of the Grenada road transport policy, feel free to reach out to anyone at the GTC, board members, management, anyone at GTC. Feel free to reach out to any one of us.
Mr. Bartholomew.
To be a major problem, I don't know if you'll agree with me, and I think I've seen one person raise it. Yeah, is the operation of the use of the roads by these heavy-duty vehicles, heavy equipment, and these trailer trucks. Now, of course, the economy, the parts of the economy, namely construction and so, that is buoyant. Those parts are really related to the operation of these trucks. So it can be a situation where you say that they can't use the roads.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you take the point that Ken was making, when they cause traffic jam and people either diverted or they are caused to reach late to their appointments, it has a double effect on the economic activity. So to me, you have to strike a balance between those two. And I guess it is something that you have given thought.
Yeah. Yes, congestion. I mean, congestion is really a problem of alternatives. And in fact, in the technical term, I think is the Dow Thompson, the Dow Thompson that they look at. It's a paradox where if you have better public transportation system, then people will buy less cars. And when you talked earlier about a problem of development, in a sense, it's a problem of development, but it's a problem of unbridled, uncontrolled development. And that is what we've had in Grenada. So it's not, transportation is never this political thing of a 5-year cycle of one government or not. It's something that built up over decades, periods. I remember, Lane, you remember when we coming from school and walking up in the lane, sometimes you see 2 vehicles pass you or 3 vehicles pass you. Now it's a literal parking lot, a traffic jam. So you have to have alternatives, and it's not the trucks. I don't know if you have alternative for the trucks. I really feel that you probably could do some of the same things with 2 smaller trucks than in one of the large 10-ton trucks that you see on the road, which whatever benefits it's making for the operator by bringing 1 load where you could bring 2, the damage it's causing to the size of the road, eventually somebody has to pay for that. So even if you think you're saving in terms of throughput of materials, you're actually losing.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of things like that. Mr. Campbell, just 1 second, because I really wanted him to introduce this. And when I was talking about uncontrolled development, it's the role of your public transportation system. And I think we have to talk about that, because sometimes in this country, because so many people own private buses, it become a very difficult discussion to discuss this, because you're talking about people's livelihood, you're talking about people's pockets. But it's a really important discussion that the nation has to have, because if you have public transportation and you have people who work in the hotels can't get transportation finish at 11 o'clock, or if they miss the staff bus, or what is the cost of the hotel having to provide staff bus because there is no public transportation. So if what happens on a Sunday, if you are working in one of the institutions, I remember on a Sunday morning, you usually give people a ride going up to Richmond, going to Tempe, because they can't get a bus. So a country developing without a public transportation system is really bad in development. And buses have to be running later. They have to run not based on when an operator feels he's going to run. It's a public need. And so it has to be viewed as such. And if you don't fix the public transportation system, young people, when they come out of school and they get a job, the first thing would be to buy a car. Not just because it's a status symbol, but because for them to move after 6 o'clock, for them to get them to anywhere, they have to get a car. And so that adds to the entire congestion and this warped development. Every week you see a boat coming with 600 more. So we have to find ways to solve the thing, and we have to have the political will, if I happen to say it, to actually do something, because same old will not solve this congestion problem.
Yeah, I wanted to just expand on the initial question that you had asked. That's about the restriction of heavy duty vehicles. So we have looked at the peak hours, right, in Grenada, which is roughly between 7:30 and 9:30 in the morning and 3:30 to 5 on afternoons during the week. And we have discussed, and it is under consideration for some layer of protection for commuters in the morning, private vehicles, buses, etc., and potentially adjusting the balance of the type of vehicles we see operating during those times. It's still in discussion at this point, so I don't have any definitive form of language to read out for you, but what I will say is it is under consideration.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Lewis and Mr. Campbell, thank you both so much.
Yeah.
I want to touch on something Mr. Bartholomew said though that struck me, and I think one of our audience members also had a comment in relation to that. Mr. Bartholomew would have mentioned that there would be a road transportation policy, and he has encouraged persons, the public, to reach out to any board member or to reach out to the GTC generally for their input if they want to have input. I'm just suggesting perhaps for consideration some public consultations, invite the public to come to meet with the board members at a particular time and place so that persons can see who these persons are. The general public can see who the members are and they'll be able to engage with you on a one-on-one basis. Beyond that, and the comment was made by Ms. Barbara Andrews. She says it's easy to say reach out to board members to give comments, etc. But who are they? Are their contacts available? Easier said than done. So I think what I would also encourage Mr. Bartholomew or any member today is just to probably give an email address. Persons can just send a comment or question or query, and perhaps consider some kind of consultation with the public in the near future, so that they, beyond this platform, they're able to communicate with the members.
Let me add something as well to what Mr. Bartholomew said, and hopefully this helps Ms. Barbara Andrews and the question she had. Rather than going directly to board members, I wouldn't consider that the most effective way. If we're talking about, let's say, trying to reach the GTC has an office located at the National Stadium where you can actually walk in and speak with the various staff that run the operational side, and they're available to you every day of the week, right? So if you have a letter, if you have something that you want to share, and they can make the determination from your request or proposal or anything that you really want to talk about, if it requires even the board to take action. That action that you're seeking or idea or whatever it is may be solvable without even the board's interaction, right? If it's needed, then it's really not a lot of time generally before we receive communication from the CEO and staff. So I would recommend using that. The GTC also has a social media platform across all the various platforms. So that's Instagram, Facebook, and all you have to do is type in Grenada Transport Commission, and it's the first thing that comes up. And you can message them directly there, and the staff will actually pick up on your correspondence. But I would say if you're looking for maybe official correspondence, I would say drop in a letter or mail in a letter, and certainly the CEO can leave that information with the team so that can be broadcasted as needed, right?
And if I may just say something quickly. Quite recently, there was a challenge with a school. They wanted some information. They wanted some school crossing signs. They reached out to us. And within a couple of weeks, we had these signs and everything properly installed, a school goal sign, a school zone signs installed and everything. They reached out to us and that was done. What I'm trying to show that we are reachable, we are approachable, and we are reachable. Yeah. And any information, any question, any information, any concern, you're free to come into us. Go on one of our social media platforms, whatever it is. But we are open and amicable to any sort of suggestions.
Yeah, one last thing, Ms. McLean. We did discuss just recently the framework or idea, I want to say, of a transportation forum. And I've spoken with the CEO probably in the last 2 weeks also about it. It was floated to some members of the board. So that's something that has been, and I say that in light of, we've seen the creatives do sort of like an outreach for all the creatives on the island, right? I'm talking about something more in the framework of reaching out to all stakeholders, including members of the public, where we can have a heart-to-heart on all right areas of traffic, and we can even mesh in experts from the region and other areas. And from this, the GTC can then mesh all the things we're working on with direct input from other members of stakeholders, right? So that's certainly something that's been floated over, I think, the last few weeks within the GTC at different levels.
Yeah.
If
I've heard it said that in the English-speaking Caribbean, that Grenada has the best network of roads in terms of interconnection between different parishes and different locations. Have we given consideration to the most efficient use of this network? And I'm addressing this in the context of the point Ken raised about capacity.
Yeah.
Could I quickly answer that question? Yes, the present study that is going on with in the creation of the policy, the road transport policy, the road network, all the road network being considered. And as you said, Grenada has a very interesting road network, interconnection network, and that is being looked at, that is being considered in that policy that is being put forward. But I'd like to just step back a bit and pick up on something Mr. Lewis was saying, and it's very dear to me, in terms of public transportation, you know. And I think it's absolutely critical. Mr. Lewis is a highly respected public transportation personnel based on his actual work, you know. And I think he and I are always on cue when coming to public transportation. And with a lack of public transportation, it leaves the door open for everything to happen. As a matter of fact, Mr. Lewis talked about someone buying a car. You know, when you ask them, look, why did you choose to buy a car? Because a car is one of the major investments any young person will make outside of a house. It's a car. You know, I ask them, why did you buy a car? And they say, hey, you know something, if I don't buy a car, I may end up losing my job, you know, and I want my job, you know. But if it is that there is a proper transportation system, you know, as Mr. Lewis is accustomed to, because he's in the middle of it. He's part of it, where this daily thing, you know. If you have a public transportation system, good, then that will eliminate one of the excuses that someone will make when you ask them why they choose, you know, to buy a car, you know. And Mr. Lewis talked about it too, you know, people working in the hotel industries, you know, all these places, they have some serious issues, you know. Someone living in Sutton might have serious challenges picking up a job in Granans, you know, because of transportation issues. Our job at the GTC is to do the necessary thing, put in necessary measures, the necessary transportation system, do the necessary studies, good, to see how we can alleviate that and create an efficient public transportation system. We are working with the MDA. We are talking to the Taxis Association. We are working very closely with the MBA, and we have done quite a lot of things with the MBA trying to improve it, you know. But it's a work in progress. But I agree with Mr. Lewis. If you have a functional public transport system, good, then it could be one of the factors in alleviating traffic woes.
Mr. Layne, just to touch on some more of the question that you had asked about the routes, the roads. Yeah, it's been given some thought, right? There've been some past sustainable studies that have pointed out maybe a feeder system might work best for Grenada based on the roads that we have. That's where you have more of a more direct route system, and you have smaller buses or feeder systems feeding into the communities from there, right? There's an argument that that system would work better in Grenada than the current system we have today, right? What the GTC is focused on really is modeling, right, at this time, because what we don't want to do is get into this execution of a half-baked system that would, instead of providing solutions that people are desperate for today, provide more frustration, right? More congestion, more buses when you don't necessarily need more buses, right? It might be a case where, we might have more than enough buses, but their allocation to different routes might not be balanced, right? So a lot of things, to answer your question, yes, we have been looking at it, but there's still more fundamentals that need to be dropped in place for us to actually build out this model, of which we sort of touched on before, right, in the last show we had. So hopefully that helps.
One of the things I wanted to talk about a little bit to do with this, transportation has this unique capacity where everyone takes transportation, so everyone has an input. You have different stakeholders and so on. And that's important. But really and truly, the problems that Grenada has isn't unique. I mean, congestion happens in every country. There's a lot of small countries like us who have had some positive impact. So there is a lot of things we can do. And the only thing is it won't happen in 6 months. It won't happen immediately. This has to be a longer term project to deal. I mean, many of the European cities, when you go into the European cities, you could see how they've dealt with it. And they've had some drastic things at one time, including with cars with a certain number plate can travel on a certain day. There's a lot that can be done. And I'm not saying that we have to go to those, but I'm just having to point out that many times I find when I'm in Grenada, a lot of people talk as though we are so unique. We need to, we need, specific. No. Congestion is something that is generalized around them the world. We know how other people have dealt with it. We have to learn, and we have to look at how we can deal with it. And and even now there is so much other methods, like you have electronic road pricing. If you travel in London and you travel on certain streets where people need to make them deliveries and so on, you have to pay a toll. There is the 407 in Canada. If you want to get quicker into the city, the Toronto area, you take the 407 and you pay. So, and if you want to keep cars out of the CDB, the Central and Business District, you have to pay a certain toll. So there is a lot of ways and things we can do to ease up from the congestion, in addition to things like the public transportation system. There is also travel demand and management, which is another method that is used commonly around the world, where there are permits, fees, and used to control the number of vehicles. If you travel into Manhattan in New York now, you have to pay a certain toll. So there's a lot of things that we can do with all of the sensors and real time. And some of these are not even that expensive again, because they're basically cameras that will just take license plate and make sure they have the information in, and that goes back into the system that we would have in the registry and so on. So automatically a policeman don't have to stay on the side, or a traffic checker, or traffic warden in our case, and take a number. And these systems are there and they're not even expensive. So I think we have to make a lot of move towards that. But as the CEO keeps saying, those things have to be done in a a holistic, and the board is actually moving towards that. We have consultants on boards who are looking at some of these. Again, people talk about the board members. The board members is like a board. Usually board meets once a month, once every 3 months. We meet monthly and we give advice, but we're not the ones doing the work day to day. So we won't always be available, for a stakeholder. But Mr. Campbell said we do have an office and people can come in, and the CEO is a full-time um, leader of that office.
So, Ken, with regard to mitigation measures for short-term and medium and long-term solutions, in which
Yes,
category would you place the use of tools?
I would say in our case, that may have to be a medium term at best. Um, because one, you have to put in the infrastructure, and you have to thoroughly think it out, sure that you have to do a lot of studies and feasibilities to make sure you can get it done. But I think technically it could be done in the short term, but there are some cultural awareness and stuff like that that you would have to put in place, because remember, we have not been accustomed to that, and it's going to be a pretty big change. So in many of the countries, I mean, this happens all the time. So I think those are things that we definitely have to move towards, because if people want to keep buying cars, and that is them the right at the moment, I mean, it's a right, to buy a vehicle, and no one can really stop that. So I think if we are going to do that, we have to look at some of the mitigation methods that you just mentioned.
But you have a background in economics, and we know there is something called price elasticity.
Hmm.
How does that relate to vehicles, the vehicles?
You mean in terms of buying?
Yeah. So, for example, the use of fiscal measures
Yeah.
in
Well,
that aspect.
yes, that is one. I know Mr. Campbell has a very strong idea on this, and I kind of agree with him. Mr. Campbell, you want to go on that, because I know that's your thing about
Yeah,
yeah,
we're talking about the current model of restricting vehicles based on the
exactly. Yes, that one.
age, etc. I know we touched on this not so long ago on a previous show,
Yes, we
right?
do.
And to be honest with you, from the one of the last updates, right? So just to be clear for the audience, what we're referring to, the restriction on the age of vehicles. What we had indicated and what I had shared was the concern that adjusting simply the age of the vehicles would not significantly impact the total amount of vehicles entering the island, right? And that's because it's one lever by itself, in a vacuum. And certainly it's simply just not enough. And you have the financial institutions which can then increase the term of loans, which has happened, by the way, right?
Yeah.
So terms of loans have increased, as we pointed out. And what we've also noticed is that the ratio of new vehicles coming in weekly has jumped, right? So what effectively we've done is just made vehicles newer. We have not certainly stopped vehicles from coming in. Now, this is important to note, right? But in not by itself, it's not our plan to simply just stop vehicles from coming in. As any of the gentlemen on the call tonight will tell you, it has to be hand in hand with available transportation and world-class transportation, right? So once you start considering any strict policy that eventually starts working to limit the amount of vehicles that essentially come in, because Grenada is waterlocked, we can only grow our vehicle population by so much, right? On the last show, we indicated, I think there were 60,000 plus registered vehicles, about 40 something plus thousand operating at any given time on the road. That's a ton. That's past our capacity, arguably, right? And fundamentally, our argument at the GTC is that if we can provide world class, right, transportation, where what we're talking about is enough space, safety, scheduling, right? And accessibility. So even if you had any sort of ailment whatsoever, you can still feel like you have access to that bus system, whether it's a wheelchair or any other, accessibility issue. If you had a system that would make that things available to you, then again, the argument is we wouldn't have a need for so much of the private transportation, right?
Yeah.
So our goal ultimately is to turn multiple dials, right? We've discussed different ways. I heard you mention tolls, right? And Mr. Lewis chimed in. I'm not saying tolls are the answer, but certainly the idea is that if you turn enough of them, right, and you also make traveling on a bus attractive, meaning to the youth or to anyone on the call listening in, if you knew that you could go to a function, right? You have a function, let's say next week, Saturday, right? And you wanted to, that function is at 7, right? And you knew that you could walk a relatively short distance and enjoy a comfortable ride, right? Enough space for you, whether it's your loved ones, and any baggage to safely ride and get to within a short distance of the activity, where you could enjoy a safe drink, right? And then see a time or know a time that you could hop back on that bus and get back to your original destination, right? Without having to drive or take a risk after drinking or being stuck in traffic and all these things. You could just relax back on a bus and have that bus drop you within a short distance of where you're going. There's a case there to state that there would be less likelihood, that that person would feel like they're being forced to, or they don't have an option other than buying a vehicle to alleviate those type of issues. And that's just one of many, right? We're talking about getting to work on time, all these different things, right, that exist. Even, and CEO can talk about the school bus pilot, right? Getting kids to school on time, right? Those things are part of the reason why a parent will pick up on, and start talking to a financial institution about financing a private vehicle, because the current system today does not enable scheduling. It does not enable getting there on time. You're at the mercy of a lot of different elements, right? Acting upon those buses, those operators, it's not any one person's fault. It's just that the system today is not built to handle the modern Grenadians' needs. And that needs to change, right? We more than ever right now, right? I'm seeing comments, by the way, in your chat talking about, can we look at changing the times for
Hours
work
of work.
and other elements, right? That's a sense of struggle because they're realizing, man, I'm trying to get to work and this is peak hours. I'm not able to leave or predict the time in which I leave my home, that I can, accurately within, even if you had a tolerance to it, right? Plus or minus 10 minutes. We don't have any of that accuracy home. So it makes it difficult for any professional home, right? Just trying to earn a living, trying to provide a service or anything, right? So it's key.
Okay,
I
so
just
when we come back in, just give us to
okay.
recognize those sponsored the program. Aisha is going to read some of the comments, if not all, and we then take you, Ken, and I have another issue I want to raise. But we just want to recognize those who allow us to assist us in bringing this program every week, namely GEL Professional Solutions Inc. Jim FM carried the program out of on FM radio out of Canada, and also Grenada Technical and Allied Workers Union, GTAW.
Attention all workers, your health and safety at work are critical. At Grenada Technical and Allied Workers Union, we are dedicated to ensuring you have a safe and secure work environment. If you encounter unsafe conditions or are involved in an accident, take immediate actions. Report it to the company, your shop steward, and make sure it reaches your union. Your health and safety is a priority, and a strong union means a strong voice for your rights. Don't wait. Address concerns right away and protect your well-being. For a safer workplace and a better quality of life, stand with the Grenada Technical and Allied Workers Union. Together, we can create a safer, healthier work environment for everyone.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Welcome back. So I'm going to read some of the comments that we've been receiving this evening. And John Calise, he says, a pleasant good evening to everyone. Cyrus Griffith comments, special days should be considered for heavy-duty vehicles to travel on roads. He further states, there should be a constant supply of traffic police and wardens managing the Granans Valley roads to ensure the smooth flow of traffic. Sonia Nixon says, regulations ensure human safety, aesthetics, patency of traffic flow. Education is lacking for population to understand their roles and potential benefits. Barbara Andrews, I think I previously mentioned Barbara's comment. Kevin says, good evening. Ernest Richardson, what about changing of work hours? Example, 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., and the usual 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Goodwin Thomas comments, has the board taken into consideration the time of day work starts and finish, which is one of the reasons for congestion between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. and 5 p.m. We need to change working hours and have a system whereby some workers will start at different hours during the morning and then they will leave work at different hours in the afternoon. The same can apply to school as well.
Yeah,
Anyone?
we can address this.
Yes.
Yeah. I think in extreme situations, people have done things like that to get rid of congestion. But I think there are more like sort of fundamental things that we have to do. One of the things I know the government has talked about, and I think we have to start to address transportation responds to origin destination needs for movement. So if you have all of the workplaces in the south and people live in other parts of the country, you have someone in Guelph. I remember talking to a young lady who said that she basically had to give up a job in the south because from the time she wakes up in the morning, and I forgot the time, but very early to get the kids ready to then go to drop them off, then to come to town to take that two-fare zone to try to get into Granans, she was constantly reaching late. And I make this point to say that transportation cannot be devoid from the infrastructural development in the country. So, in many countries, I remember going to the south of Portugal, and one of the greatest things was to see that people live relatively close to where they work. So they don't have to travel much. If you have more development throughout the country, as Grenada had in the past, then everybody don't have to come to the south of St. George's them to actually go to work. So that becomes a problem. So you have to have far more even development. And I see the government are making some moves in that in the St. Patrick's properties and so on. So you have to have development that helps the transportation system. Otherwise, anyway, you are going to get congestion. As regards the night and day and the moving, if you there is this thing in transportation where they say build it and it will come. If you have night transportation, then people will tend to open later. Then you will have more staggered hours. Then you could do a lot more, which will actually ease transportation. But somebody has to actually move it. And so that's something that the GTC will be looking at, how we can really help with night transportation. Of course, we're not a business, but we can lay down the policies and so on that can actually help with that. And it's one of the things we are looking to help with.
Great.
Can I just add to what Mr. Lewis is saying?
Yes.
There was a document called a Sustainable Road Development Plan. It was commissioned by the CDB and it was completed sometime last year. And based on that, coming from that, the commission, the board came up with a very comprehensive strategic plan with short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals. We are at present, actually trying to implementing some of the short-term goals, and probably we speak about it later. Some of the short-term goals, we're actually implementing some of those goals. We are also working with the CDB and some consultants, looking at some of the other goals. And some of the goals that we're looking at is things like cashless system. The operators has been crying for a cashless system in terms of safety, in terms of operating late at night. They say one of the things that mitigate against them operating at night is that safety thing, being robbed. Yeah. So part of one of the remit of the consultant, we have some consultants working on 3 or 4 key remits that coming from the strategic plan and that road-based transportation plan. One is a cashless system that will allow operators to work as late as they could, right? Without that fear of being robbed, both from the passenger point of view and from the operator point of view, because allow the passenger, to use a card or different methodologies to travel. 2, what we are looking at also is the development of main trunk routes and feeder routes. And some of the trunk routes will actually be looking at to bypass St. George's. Because what happens now is that everything comes to St. George's, and then from St. George's, everything goes to mostly Granans. Some of the routes that are being looked at now, and it's all being studied, it's not being implemented just quote unquote, for want of a better word, willy-nilly, but it's being studied. Right? You have routes coming from, whether say Sotters, bypassing or Granville or St. Mark or one of those areas, bypassing the town, right? And heading straight down to Granans. So if you want a direct ride from Sotters to Granans, we are looking into that now. We are studying that now. We are doing our research on those things now. So those things are happening as we speak in terms of our research consultant working on these things. We also working on a full database of all transportation, all vehicles. We realize there is some discrepancy in terms of accounting for vehicles, as I think Mr. Campbell alluded to it. There are about 40,000 vehicles on the road, but they have about 60, 70,000 vehicles are registered. So it means that a lot of vehicles are sitting all over in people's garage on the side of the road for years, literally for years, And the government, through the GDC, must have a plan to deal. And again, it has to be holistic. It cannot be a one focusing, must have a plan to deal with all those 20,000 or so odd vehicles that are not on the road, that are sitting in people's yards, sitting in people's garage, sitting on the side of the road for years. So we have to come up with a plan to deal with all those things. The other thing that the consultants are dealing with as part of our strategic plan and based on the road-based transportation plan, they're also dealing with the upgrading, upliftment of terminals. Whether, as you may not know this, but the terminal in St. George's has been vested in the GTC. So in the not too distant future, we'll be taking over the management of that terminal. We'll be upgrading it to, quote unquote, a world-class standard. So the traveling public could have, it will be very friendly, public friendly, customer friendly, real-time information. You could go in there, you could charge your phone, it will be totally different to what it is now. Right? It has been vested in us, and we are working with the consultant to come up with a retrofitting plan for it. We are also looking at Sauters. As you know, nothing is Sauters. We are also looking at Granville, and also looking to see where we could put in other transportation hubs, all with the view of making transportation as easy as possible and reducing some of the condition, the traffic woes, reducing some of it. As we keep saying all the time, it isn't a one focusing, it's a holistic thing. It goes much, much, much more than what I just said. There are a lot of other players and a lot of other stakeholders that will have to come into that mix to ensure that we reach the goal that we reach. As a matter of fact, in creating some of the hubs that we want to create, we want to create parking area, so that you're coming from maybe St. Andrews, you reach St. David, there's a hub in St. David, you don't have to drive your car down into St. George's. You could park there, take a transport system, it will be multimodal. You could take a transport system and you could come in town, so you wouldn't come and add to the congestion in town. And there'll be hubs in different areas with parking area where you could park, take the transport and come in town. It's all part and parcel of all the things, and there's a list. The list is not exhaustive of all the things that we are doing to reach the goal that we want to reach in terms of transportation in Grenada. And we also, not forgetting Carriacou, So we also looking at Carriacou and looking at one of the, what sort of system that we could input in Carriacou. As a matter of fact, probably within the next couple of weeks, a team from the GDC will be going to Carriacou to look at certain things that we have to put together to talk to the bus operators there and put certain things in place to alleviate some of their challenges that they have. So we're looking at it very, very holistically. And one of the things I think I like about our board is that we are not afraid to challenge the established transportation. As Mr. Lewis said, for almost every system, there has been a solution, right? But it may not be a Grenada solution. But there are solutions to almost every traffic woes all over the world. We want to ensure that when we put a solution, the solution is a Grenada solution, not just a generic solution, and it's a workable Grenada solution.
Any update on the thinking on and implementation of the community parking issue? That there are some areas in Grenada, in particular the parish of St. George, and some other parishes that really cry out for that.
Yeah,
the community usually the roadside as the parking areas.
Yeah, I would say it's part of a package the technical body within the board is considering. And this is all part of the industrial vehicles at peak times, ensuring that we are also looking at, so this is part of a package, as I said, it's part of other things where we're looking at the urban planning aspect as well. We are hoping to collaborate with urban planning, of course, on the planning group and infrastructure. One-way streets, for example, on some of the streets that we have in St. George's especially, we understand right now there's a need where we may have to, either look at reversing the flow on certain streets or, certainly looking at certain times of the day where it's more on a time-based mechanism, right? Where we are looking at peak hours again, or off-peak hours where that direction on the flow of traffic is reversed. One of the things that people do not talk about, right, home, and this is from, certainly our observation from the streets home in Grenada, is that we have a crosswalk problem. In fact, this is a very big contributor, and this is part of that wider package that we are considering, right? Currently, with traffic in Grenada, as you come across crosswalks, you'll notice that the moment you see someone, it doesn't matter how many vehicles, you see someone starting to cross, those 50, 100 vehicles have to stop, right? And in many parts of the world, you'll know that that's simply just not the rules. Those are not the rules. Those are, in fact, we use time-based systems to govern how long people can walk for, right? A case in point, and again, I'm not pointing out the green, yellow, and red, or amber, I should say, in Grenada, right, with the walk sign. But it's a similar, think of it as a timed crosswalk, right? For many of the areas where we have multiple crosswalks in areas during peak hours where we have hundreds, thousands of vehicles trying to exit, right? Peak zones. And here you have one or two persons, right, that immediately just got to that point and they can freeze the flow of those vehicles, right? And we have crosswalks like this that exist in the heart of St. George's, right? Close to the terminal. We have crosswalks like this that extend throughout Grandlands, right? At peak hours. Think about it. I'm sure all the drivers in the comments know about this, right? So rather than having a situation where that person is entitled to immediately cross, what we're talking about is a indication system, or you have the technology today where it shows the time and when they are allowed to go, but also a system to alert the drivers, right, that they have to go ahead despite seeing someone there, right? So you need a system that protects both the pedestrian, the drivers, and allows for a time system where you can allow for a certain time period for that congested traffic to flow, to get those the bodies of traffic out of there. Something we've also discussed as well are bleedovers, right? This is well known within the urban planning community and used throughout New York, Chicago, Europe, and something we can definitely explore. And we've had preliminary engagement with the Commissioner of Police to run a pilot in the South that looks at bleedover routes. So the argument here is that you can sustain and get to from point A to point B faster by enabling a longer route, right? Rather than the original route you had by continuously stopping, going. Whereas if you added a mile or two to that route, where you're constantly moving at a sustained speed, you get there faster. So that's something that we are also thinking could be combined with the timed crosswalks and other things that we can experiment with, and then look at rolling out the technology, at a wider level, right? We talked about tolling. But as Mr. Lewis alluded to, tolling requires a mature system, right, to manage the enforcement and all aspects, right, for vehicles. But we definitely talked about communities like Brazan and others where, there is community space. In fact, on my last trip home, I actually walked just south of Brazan, where you have some lots along the coastal road, right? That where you could argue you could do some parallel parking, right? Or some level of parking to remove vehicles from where they are today. That would drastically free up that congested zone, right? That turns into a one lane. In fact, sometimes it's a zigzag situation where one side becomes blocked, the other side is not, and then it flips higher up, So, to answer your question, yes, we have considered it, and the technical subcommittee is looking at a package to deliver to the wider board for, assessment and approval.
And let me ask also, who is responsible for the management of the traffic lights? The board?
I believe. Go ahead, Mr. Lewis.
The commission?
Traffic?
No,
but
traffic.
Let me answer that. We had a discussion with the Commissioner of Police a couple of months ago, and apparently they are setting up a control room right now. They set up a control room that will speak to this traffic light system.
Okay, because there's a problem. On many occasions, I see a traffic warden or a police officer. I suspect what I'll see it too. Witness it. in order to help the situation, they will then manually start calling the traffic. But at the same time, the lights continue operating. So, for example, you might be going down and you see the light on green and you respond to the light, but only to realize that the officer or whoever it is telling you to stop.
Yeah.
And I've found one or two people actually calling radio programs complaining about that. And I've personally witnessed it. It's just something to address. Maybe they take off the lights when that is happening. I don't know how feasible that is. Yeah.
Let me just add
them.
Oh, sorry. Let me just add something to the traffic light system. The traffic light system, again, I think we always like to look at the enabling technologies. I think Mr. Lewis again alluded to using technology. We have to use technology. And there are technology available that sense vehicles. And it will allow, it sense a vehicle bill up. It will change the traffic light based on the bill up of vehicles. So that's a technology that's there. It's available. It's easy. So that's probably those are something that that probably we could look at in terms of the traffic light. It senses the traffic and allow and it changes to allow the traffic to flow. One of the other things that we look at, again, we try to put in things in place that will add up to the whole. And another little thing that we have, not little thing, but another thing that we have is the school bus system, a pilot school bus system running. Right? I wouldn't have time to get into the full run of the system, but I bring that up in terms of looking at traffic rules, the problem with build up of traffic. And one of the things that we realize is that a lot of these schools, there's a lot of traffic build up, good, at a lot of these schools when parents are coming, good, to drop off children, So you have 100 trains going to the school, so 100 cars will come to drop off these children. And we are saying, if it is that you have a school bus, instead of having 100 cars, let's say a school bus taking 18 students, instead of having 18 cars, you have one school bus will come, good, and do that. I'm being a bit simplistic here. Just one school bus will come and take that. So the idea for when the school system is up and running fully, good, it will.
Yeah, we lost him.
We have lost him. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if you want to.
While he's frozen, I just want to make this point. For people as me and Mr. Layne who went to school together, this is one of the most amazing things for me. Because from the time we were 10, we had to just find our way to school. Okay.
Are you hearing me? Oh, okay.
Oh, you go ahead.
Yeah.
No, you have students taking the bus from the terminus.
Yeah.
The drop in convent of my PVC.
It's incredible.
Yeah, but I don't think I want to jump into the school bus pilot program. It will take a little while, but it's going well. It's going excellent. It's delivering what it's supposed to be deliver. But I was just talking in terms of the traffic congestion, and we think that having the school bus system in full operation, parents will not have to go and drop off children at the school again and cause that extra traffic around these school areas. And Mr. Campbell alluded to the pedestrian challenges. It causes traffic, And Mr. Campbell, remember a couple of months ago, you put a drone up in St. George's there, and had a look down at it was amazing, to look up from there and see exactly the kind of traffic.
I think we are missing him again.
But that one person to cross and that back up a vehicle. So just imagine, we're talking about going through the heart of town. So just imagine that it happened continuously. Yeah. So that backlog of traffic, unless that system is changed totally, I don't know, maybe an overpass or some sort of thing. That traffic situation, looking at it from what Mr. Campbell was showing with his drone, good, it brought everything home, that if we don't do something in terms of those crossing, that as long as people is crossing, you stop one vehicle, and two persons pass and people pass and then you stop another vehicle, you'll always have those sort of challenges and those sort of issues.
But
With
I don't
congestion.
understand how you resolve that, because when the pedestrian is crossing, even if they're doing so in defiance of the
you do so at risk of facing the law, right? So I mean, this all boils back to behavior, right? If we really, it's not only enforcement, but if we really want any system to work, your behavior and discipline within that system has to be spot on as well, or else we're all joking with each other. We're not serious about really changing things, right? So
there will be a percentage of people who will do it because it's
you always would have that. But that,
there
going
will be
back
a
to
large
your point,
percentage that will only do it if they know that.
so I have a joke for you, right?
Yeah.
I have a joke for you. So when I left Grenada, and we know how Grenada operates, right? You cross where you want, right? So you walk in the street. I want to get to the place where that is directly across from me. I'm going to cross right here and get there.
Yeah.
So when I first got to the States as a young adult, I mean, I was doing the same thing until my friend from the States had to warn me. He said, "You're going to get a ticket, man." And I ended up getting a strict warning from a police officer, because of they call it jaywalking, right? And there's a reason for that, because you want to preserve safety, but you also want to preserve the flow of traffic, right? In respect to the lights and other things in operation, right? So the same applies for us. If we're serious and we want things to flow the way we are needing them to, it will require the behavioral aspect to be in line as well with everything else, right?
Education will be required to.
Absolutely.
Education,
Absolutely. Awareness is going to be key. Education is going to be key. All of those things have to be aligned.
And I think when you listen to the Grenadian public, they all want that. So I don't think it's going to be very hard for people to change some of the things, because people already want it. They already want a far more orderly transportation system. They want to ensure that there are laws, clear laws, where people have them to follow. And so it's not just when you talk about stakeholder dialogue, that's important. But I think most of the stakeholders already agree. We see it, we know it. But I think we have to put the systems in place, like the CEO been mentioning, all of these systems which are available to actually start to move. And when it happens, exactly the experience of Mr. Campbell when he landed in the US is going to happen here. When someone gets a ticket, the other person will say, no, no, you can't cross, because they give tickets. So I think we have to start to apply that. But like I said, it's not just the wardens or the police giving tickets. There has to be an entire system of enforcement. How will that person pay? When will they pay? What happens if they don't pay? When a vehicle, another issue is like when a vehicle is parked badly, like I talked about before. Do we remove the vehicle or do we clamp it? Because if you clamp it, the person has to pay, yes, but it holds up and the rest of traffic. So you may have to move that vehicle to a safe place, to a pond or something like that. And then people get the message that you can't park your vehicle here at this time of the day because it really holds up traffic. So I think there's a lot of those issues where I want to say political will. I don't mean the will of the political party in power, but the governmental agencies have to take that in decisions that we are going to do this, and this is the way we are going to function.
Ken, I want to also
as
add,
we go forward.
I don't know if you remember, Ken, from in power school days.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember from Standard 1, in fact. We used to be taught how to navigate
Yes.
the traffic, or you cross the street. And that was the days when you had very few vehicles in Grenada.
Yes.
You cross the street, and some of those things stay with me now, 50 years and more later.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they still do that in school. but it is something that really needs to be part of the curriculum
Mhm.
Yeah.
as it be sung as a minor thing, but I could know. You look right, you look left, you look right again before you cross.
Mhm.
And
That's
it's
something
even
that
and
needs to
it's
be
even more important
inside of
now.
the street. You walk facing the traffic. So
Yes.
and
Yeah.
and I'm saying that was 1969, 70 again. I remember
Yeah.
some of those things, and I still act in
Right.
accordance with that. So it's very important, I think, that this thing will be part of the curriculum because Dr. Nixon has been making a point several times that behavior is a public health issue. The public transport system is a major stakeholder. The public health system, sorry, in the interest of health and well-being of the population. But I'll add also the education system.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
All of these things are very much related. When the CEO keeps talking about holistic, that's exactly what it is.
Mhm.
It's not just transportation. It's education, it's the public health issues, it's the safety issues. All of them are integrated into this.
Because
Yeah.
a few years ago, Grenada had the unique experience. I suspect, certainly in the English-speaking Caribbean, we had more deaths on the road than homicides,
Mhm.
and that was a few years ago. I mean, you can't imagine that in Trinidad or Jamaica, St. Vincent, any other countries close
Yeah.
by, Barbados.
Yeah.
You know, so you are greater risk walking on the streets than being exposed to crime, even though there has been a massive
Yeah.
uplift in crime over the last few decades. It
Yeah.
really says something. But before we end, Ken, and we have just about 80 more minutes, and see you and Matthias, I think you started off by referring to what really is a long-term solution because the generations after us, they have to resolve this matter. And I think in terms of what kind of roads, uh, you spoke about a highway from one part of the country to the next part. What you envisage in terms of the road network? I remember at a particular period in the history of Grenada, which you and I know well, Ken, even then, that issue has been. I remember some people were saying at the time at a very high level that at some time we'll have to either go below the ground or go above the ground. But we must solve this transport problem. At that time, we probably had about maybe about half of the amount of vehicles and issue of congestion. But in terms of looking forward, recognizing the trajectory of the country in terms of development, I think there is
Right.
even more people now.
Fair quarter. I think when I left Grenada to study in the early 90s, that's when we hit 10,000 cars. And
Right.
today, as we're pointing out, it's over like 60, 65 or something of the thousand cars
Right.
registered. So it's a really, really big hit. My idea, I think I've talked about this already. I've written something on this. And it's not from me. I've actually heard other engineers talk about that. Is about doing a road that would be like a spinal road that would come basically from the airport that would go north to Sotes through the Granitang or on the outskirts of the Granitang, that would eventually have um, exits to all of the major communities. So if you do something like that, it's going to be it's going to cost a lot of money, of course, but there's a lot of cooperation with larger countries which have done that. Some of them that to support major projects like that. So I think it's something we could really look at longer term because you need to protect the environment, but really and truly, when you look at the cost of all of the roads going around, the cost of when that roads failed, I mean, the Moline region, and people having to go through Mount Morris. I mean, if another crisis like that happens, the cost of that is just astronomical, and you don't see it day to day. but it affects the overall economy. And so I think something like this, if we're talking about easing up on congestion, we have to have more decentralized development in the country. And a road like that will allow a tourist landing in Morris Bishop International to get to a hotel in Sotes in probably 20, 25 minutes. You'll be also able to take larger buses. If you look at the buses we have in Grenada, part of the problem with the public transportation system is because the roads are so small. If you have to have a 25-seater bus, which is basically like the coasters or so, those buses find it very difficult to walk on Grenada's road with the rest of traffic because they're a bit wider. Now, those buses are actually small buses in most other societies. So we have to do some sort of improvement to the road network, but it just shouldn't be building back on the same roads that we already have. It should really be building new roads using all of the new materials so we can get to places easier while protecting the environment and protecting the great country that we have.
And how would your idea of this major highway integrate with the existing road network?
Well, I think the existing road network would be sort of minor roads. I think with global warming and the whole environment changing, the coastal roads we have is a real problem because those roads are going to become impassable if there is you wouldn't be able to use them if there's a big storm surge or something like that, because all of the roads I said were built all on the coast without a whole lot of planning, except the Granite Tank Road, which of course is not conducive to just traveling itself. And you may have to build in such a way that you have the earthworks going through some of the highland instead of just going on the contours. So the road become much the gradient become much less and really able to use to get to places quickly. And so the road network that we have now will just integrate with it. We have very poor roads going east-west. So if you're in Guave and you want to get to St. David's, how do you do that? You have to go all around the country. There isn't anything going through. And from the road that was built recently in Bolio to go into the Grenville Vale area, we can do these things, So I think they have to be we have to also look on the capital side. What capital projects need to be done on the roads, because we can't just leave the roads as they are. I think the government is doing really great with what they did, widening the roads in Granny Thang. I mean, that thing has changed a lot, some of them, those corners. But we need to do more of that on the existing roads. But we also we also need a spinal highway, which will open up development in the rest of the country and not have this congestion happening in the south of the country.
Hatuey and CEO?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the road networks, what Mr. Lewis is stating, if you look at Jamaica, right, and you look at the road that takes you from Kingston to Ocho Rios, right, it's similar to what he's stating, right? It's a road carved out of the mountains, pretty much taking you through the hills and valleys, right? Do I see that? My key thing is I do think that is a very long term, and Mr. Lewis would probably agree to this. This is a very long term type of idea that would need, urban planning and all the other bodies.
Very long term in your mind as somebody years?
I think so. Well, when I say long term, I mean in terms of, I wouldn't be able to give you exactly years, but when I look at the amount of parties that would have to fundamentally get this to a point where you could drive right? And then the investment. So for example, you talk to a Jamaican about the cost on the population to build that said road I just mentioned. It turned out to be very expensive, and that population would be paying for that road for the next 50 years, 50 to 75 years, if I'm to be correct, right? So generational payments, so to speak, right? Now, I'm not saying that that would be the case for Grenada, but I do consider something like this. While if it were implemented, would it work? Of course, that's not the debate here. Mr. Lewis is right on that. What I would say is that in terms of solution for transportation and congestion in the short and medium terms, I would not frame it as one of those, right? And I'm sure Mr. Lewis would tell you that that's a long-term type of initiative or idea that would be on the table, right?
That's why I made the point that sometime maybe going back 45, almost 50 years ago, there was already that thinking on the table.
Right. Yeah. But no,
I have to go up or go down.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But we cannot seriously develop.
Well, Mr. Campbell, just one thing I want to say is that, you see, if we had started this 30 years ago, it would have been done. We would have been gaining a lot of the cost benefits. Now would have been the benefits. So I think there is no better time to look at longer than to start at some time.
Absolutely. Yeah. To make the case, to just add to that, to be clear, we joke about this all the time. If you don't start now, you never start, right? You won't start at all. So, and that applies to anything that you're doing, no matter how long term we're talking, right? But yeah, so I do agree. Yeah.
I think the CEO wants to come in.
What I could say is that, there are short-term, medium-term, and long-term things that we could implement. We at the GTC, what we try to do, we try to meet with the stakeholders, all the critical stakeholders, and to see what we can do short-term to get things going. We have critical discussions that is going on with people like the NBA. We have 2 programs that are going on where they're involved in it. One is the school bus program. The other one is what you call a passenger relief program, because at the end of the day, is the road. We have to cater for the road users. At the end of the day, they are our clients. The road users are our clients. And we have to ensure whether you're a trucker, whether you're using the public transportation system, whether you're a private driver, operator, owner, we want to ensure that you have a safe experience on the roadway. So we meet with the different stakeholders. The NDA, we have what you call a passenger program, where between 6, 7, and 8 o'clock, we have scheduled, and it's the beginning of a working scheduled system with the NBE. So between Sutter's, Victoria, and St. Mark, I think it is, Mr. Campbell, we have buses. So you could go to the terminal 6 o'clock and get a bus, go into any one of those areas. It's a scheduled bus, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, and 8 o'clock. So we have a contract with the bus operators to operate bus at those times. And that is working. It's working very good. And we'll be extending it. The board has approved for extended, especially that's in the west, but to extend it in the eastern parishes. So the board has approved that. So we're working out the details right now. We are meeting with the NBA, working out those actually details. The NBA is part of the school bus program because we have contracted again their drivers to work between the hours of 6:30 and 8:30 and 2:30 and 5 o'clock in the afternoon, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, to pick up the school children. It's all fully computerized system. We geomap the students, we geomap the drivers, and we geomap the schools, and the system will tell the driver exactly who to pick up, when to pick up, that sort of thing. So that is working at this point in time. In our discussion and our working with the NBA, the government, in order to ease the situation, and become more friendly, what the government has done, they have introduced a rebate system, a free rebate system with the NBA, where your bus operator get back the duties on the tax, on fuel tax. So they get it back. We are also working with them and about to implement a concession on parts and consumables like tires, oil, brakes, all these things. And again, because that sector has been neglected for a while, government is trying to pay more attention to that sector. And we hope that that will roll over to the traveling public. That's what we are looking at. So it's a work in progress that we are dealing with the NDA, right, to ensure at the end of the day is that the passengers and traveling public get at ease in their transportation to and from, whether it's, and again, I'm adding that to the cashless system. I'm adding that to all these things. So they'll get at ease. I'm adding that to the development of the different bus terminals, right? So the passengers, that's what we are catering for. The road passengers, the traveling passengers, people going to work, going for pleasure, or whatever it is. You know, I want to make their journey to and from wherever they're going as comfortable and safe, safe as possible. As a matter of fact, the school bus system, they go through a very rigorous secondary check. As against a normal statutory check, full undercarriage, right round check in order to carry the nation's school children.
Yes. So of course the NBA is the National Bus Association, that's right?
Yes, National Bus Association.
Okay, good. So
they get a rebate, and they get in concessions.
Okay, good. So we just want to, again, just recognize those who sponsor this program so that we can bring it every week. Jail Professional Solutions Inc., JMFM, carrying this program out on FM radio out of Canada, and also Grenada Technical and Allied Workers. Aisha, I don't know if you can just look at the comments before we invite final comments in the chat, before we invite final comments.
Yes, please. Sonia mentioned walk up the hill. John Clee said, how would decentralizing government ministries throughout the country? Would decentralization help with traffic congestion? And Sonia further comments, behavior is a public health issue. The PH system is exactly in a major stakeholder in the interest of health and well-being of the population. Transportation is about people, is about moving people about safely.
Yeah, to answer the decentralization, yes, it absolutely will. That no question. And there was a question about the wardens. The CEO and staff are working on warden welfare and building out a better warden system so that we can attract more and more people into the warden program. So, and that requires a conversation by itself. So all of these things to improve these parts of the system are being addressed as well. Yeah.
I would like to shout out those wardens, man. You know, you really help the entire population out with traffic. And many times I think people overlook what you do. So, on behalf of myself and the GTC, we honor you guys. Keep up the good work.
Let me just add something quickly to that. In terms of the wardens, the idea the GTC want to make the warden a career. It becomes a career. We have a stratified system where you have warden 1, warden 2, warden supervisor, warden district manager. We're making it a career. So a young person coming out of school, just as they say they want to go to the police force, just as how they say they want to go to the fire brigade, or they want to go to the prison service, we want them to say, they want to be a warden. So I could actually, and for each chair system, each system, each level, there'll be warden 1, warden 2, and the board has already approved it, warden 1, warden 2, warden 3, and there are qualification standards. There are standards for each one of the levels, So again, someone coming out from secondary school could say, yes, I can make a career out of that. And pretty soon, not too distant future, stand corrected by board members, we will be recruiting, looking to increase the quantum of wardens, because quite a lot of wardens that had over the years had left us. We'll increase the amount of wardens.
Okay, great. Aisha, as we close.
Yes, I would just like to thank our guests for the engaging discussion this evening. As I said at the beginning, I knew that it would have been a good discussion, and the audience would have been engaged, and so said, so done. And thank you all. I hope that everything goes well going forward, especially with the road transport policy, and we look forward to hearing more from the GTC in the near future.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
Thanks for the invite.
Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Good
Thank
evening.
you. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you to all those who viewed this program, all those who are providing comments or asked questions. Thank you very much.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
And thanks again, and goodbye.